Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia, and I have a really great guest tonight. He is a freelance illustrator, animator, author, fine artist. He wrote this book right here. It's a living, surviving as a freelancer in the 21st century. I actually finished the book today. You can see it's been definitely read, pages, covers a little curled. I'm going to tell you right now, I loved it. It was a fantastic read. We're going to talk to the author about a few things, but we're going to really focus on this book. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think everyone should be hitting up Amazon and picking up this book. If you're a freelancer, thinking of freelancing, it's a great read. So let me bring on the author. And I'm going to say it, I'm always bad with names. You guys know that, so I'm going to try to do this right. It's Cristian Aluas.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Michael, for the fantastic endorsement. I really appreciate
anytime.
it.
I'm a big, first of all, as you know, I'm a big supporter of indie creators.
Hmm.
And anytime there's something out there that helps, because I'm an educator as well as an artist. And anytime there's something out there to help educate people, I like to promote that.
Yeah.
It's one of those books where it's like, why didn't I think of writing it first? And it's a really good read. And before we get started, I just want to give people your contact info. They can follow you on Instagram at both Big Boss Comic and Masterpiece Art School, as well as on Twitter at Big Boss Comic. So let me just switch over here. So before we get into your book, before we get into, all the stuff that you've done, and I know some of it's in the book, guys. There's a great, he talks about his life in here and how he got into art. But why don't you share a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about what got you into art and some of your influences?
Well, I could honestly say I'm a lifelong artist. A lot of people say that, but then they don't pursue it as a career. I am lucky and privileged enough to have done that, not without struggle. And every day is a struggle, even when success, what appears like success, is happening. There's still obstacles, and sometimes you create them yourself because there's things that you as an artist are striving for. So, and as a person. So, but regardless, I was born in Romania, which was a communist country when I was growing up, and my parents escaped and emigrated to Canada. So I was an immigrant to Canada, and I grew up in Ottawa, Canada, spent over 20 years of my life there, and the first 10 years of my career started there. I studied animation in college in Ottawa. Then I studied creative writing in Montreal with a minor in studio art and art history. I didn't complete that. I came back after 2 years and I just started my career. That's that's a story in the book. But yeah, I started my career, and it was kind of humbling, let's put it that way. For the first certainly about 3 to 4 years, it was an interesting challenge because I was starting something new. I turned away all the animation jobs that were at my disposal, and I worked in animation for a couple of years. I turned those away for this kind of new vision that I had for myself. Although even to this day, I still do animation freelance, but on a smaller independent scale.
Yeah.
But I turned down working for studios, and instead I registered my own business, which was a small press. It was like a small publishing press. So I published graphic novels and art books for about 5 years, and then just shifted to freelancing in that time frame. So I focused then on freelancing, and and I was teaching, and then teaching actually was the first time I started to make an income as an artist. Because at the start, I thought I could just sell art in cafes and bars and sustain myself on that, and then use that capital, which I imagine a lot more capital, to publish books, to self-publish books. That was kind of my dream, my kind of business plan at the time. So so then I was teaching in between freelancing, and then that was really like the focus. But then I was still pursuing a lot of art shows, and gradually I worked my way up. I worked my way up to city shows where I won a show for the city, and then to private galleries, and I even have one of my fine art books in the National Gallery of Canada. So, I was working on that. But then at one point I realized that really like the fine art was a money pit in a lot of ways. I was selling the works, but not immediately. They weren't big sellouts immediately. So, like my last solo show in Canada, I sold all the works within 5 years. But that first night, driving home was a very dark night for me.
That's another story in the book, by the way, you guys.
Yeah. I sold a couple of pieces that night, but to me, that was like a massive failure. So, and then I registered a corporation that did business as a Masterpiece Art School, and I ran a brick and mortar operation that was like an art school that offered seasonal classes, like 3 nights a week, basically. Yeah. And so then I balanced that between freelancing and teaching.
Nice. It's funny because I think you and I have a lot of similar interests, a little bit similar background. I never opened up my own art school, although that was always in the back of my head. I've been teaching for God knows how long, and art, obviously. I've been teaching kids, adults, the whole work. So, reading that you did that, I thought that was pretty cool, especially getting the brick and mortar, building. That was always something I thought would be very difficult to do.
Well, I had a very special deal, actually. I rented the space from the building that I lived in. So it was like a community space. And so I didn't actually have to sign a lease. I just rented it and I booked it. And it was like, a big empty space and very professional. I used to even hold workshops there. I would like cloak the windows if I had a model. It was a lucky situation, and that's why it was kind of my goal at the time was to sell it within 2 years, and I had buyers lined up, but that was, I think, the straw that kind of not broke the camel's back, but I guess that's not the right expression, but it was kind of the component that made it hard to sell because it was like such a unique deal that I had. It was transferable, but not quite as good as like the rate that I was paying. And then so the couple of people that were looking at it, they ended up backing out of it. But that was my goal, and I got very close to it, and it was a fun little exercise in business.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and you still run it to this day. So
I run it online.
Yeah. Which is which is the way I think a lot of people are doing art class. I mean, I know people still like it, and at least here in New York, they're starting to talk to us about going back to normal a bit. But I think there's a lot of people still like the online interactions.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I just want to say hi to my buddy Jonathan, who I see is online. Hey, yes. Johnny.
Jonathan, yeah, he's a good guy. I got to get him on the show one day.
Absolutely, fantastic guy.
Yeah, no, great guy. I've watched him. I've actually, I think we've been on a Catch the Craze together.
Yeah.
Very, very, very fun guy. So you know, so you did all this great stuff, but let's talk just for a second about artists.
Mhm.
Who were some of your inspirations that helped you get into art? Who were you looking at as a kid or a teen when all this started for you? Who were you looking? It doesn't have to be comic related.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just who were you looking at that like really got you?
That's a really great question, and I haven't had many people ask me that in interviews in the last like while. And I'll tell you this: um, when I was a kid, I would copy everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My first memory was, for example, I liked wrestling when I was a small child. So I
Yeah.
would copy the wrestlers from magazines. So I would buy the magazines, copy them thoroughly, page by page,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would make up my own wrestlers. Okay. So then I would learn anatomy based on the photographs and then adapt it to my own and then just test myself, see what I remember. Then later, I remember like my dad was dating some lady, and she had all these extra glamour magazines. So she would bring, like, she brought a stack of them. I would copy all the glamour magazines,
Mm-hmm.
page by page, all these like photographs. Then when I was into baseball and hockey, I would copy like from the magazines. In both sports, I would copy goalie pictures. I when I was a kid, my era, uh, Gretzky got traded. So
Mm-hmm.
so I copied everything associated with that. I would follow OHL, which was like the little leagues, and I would buy these like kind of magazine format, periodicals, and page by page, the goalies, especially, I was a fan of. I would copy everything. So then came the comics. I would copy all the comics. I would copy McFarlane. I would copy like, less so. I like McFarlane a lot. I like Joe Quesada. I remember mimicking his style. I liked the Lobo artist of that era, which was Simon Beasley with the painted covers,
Yeah.
and that's kind of him and Frazetta at that when I became a teenager. That's when everything clicked. The heavy metal, like the goth. That's what
Yeah.
I was interested in. Dark. The demons and things. Um, that's what I was copying. That's kind of what got me into painting, the
Mm-hmm.
fantasy art, and I still paint in that style a lot when it comes for my own tastes. So those were the influences. But the reason I mentioned all the research stuff uh, was that. Oh, and then I shouldn't forget, like, a huge influence was I went to an arts high school, and then in college, in both areas, I had a lot of life drawing training. So drawing from life became the epitome of what I wanted to master. And I still value that extremely highly, because if you're good at that, you're good at just about anything if you
Yeah.
want to apply yourself,
Yeah.
because it's all about seeing. That's what visual art is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to some extent, uh, literature is that way, and certainly in the way that I write it, because I try to visualize something, and then I describe everything that I visualize. So
Yeah.
I'm literally painting a picture that I have in my mind with my words. So I think all those things, the studying, are important. I remember one last little example. I remember the summer when I was 11, and uh, I was that's when I mastered drawing hands, and I mastered them drawing hands in one position.
Yeah.
I don't really get the angle. But what happened was I traced my hand first on the page, and then I copied all the knuckles, all the nuances, and then for weeks I kept drawing it from the different angles, and then eventually I got good at drawing one hand that was kind of like just thrown like that,
Yeah.
and I drew it on everything, and I finally understood. I kind of had to go too far and then fall back
Yeah.
in my learning. So yeah, those were my influences. Like everything from life. I still go drawing in Central Park and painting. So everything and anything. Just apply yourself. Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I love that you said life drawing too, because where you copied out of magazines, I used to copy out of the comic strips. I used to record cartoons, pause them, and draw what I saw on the TV, and that's kind of how I learned to teach myself to draw. But it wasn't until I got into life drawing that it really took off, that I understood things a lot more in what I was doing previously. And to me, as someone drawing comics and or just animating, I find that the understanding of not just life drawing but movement is what I try to achieve in my characters. But it comes from studying life.
You have a lot of more movement than I do, and I have some peers, certainly back from my college days, that have a little bit more of a knack for that. For me, it's kind of like my specialty is proportions, very good, and then I have a little bit of a fine art flair, to it. But it's a very what I liked about it is a very competitive environment. And I had to apply. I had to be good at life drawing to get into both schools. I had a life drawing test, drawing a nude model to get into high school, art school, and then again in college. And then so I knew, like, if I wanted to excel at art, I needed to be good in that area.
So I just want to go real quick to the comments. Hannibal, hi, how you doing?
Hannibal, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you, which I'll announce at the end of the show, who my guest is. I have a special guest tomorrow, but just so you know, Hannibal, I will see you this weekend. He knows what that means.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we got Pearl saying, "Fun drawing with Cristian." I'm sorry. Can you say it again?
Cristian.
Cristian.
Pearl, Old Stonehouse. I want to give her a shout out because it's this new group that I've joined on Meetup and does life drawing online. Phenomenal, really great. It's all video, but it works. It's really good. Good atmosphere. The same procedure. Very good.
That's great. That's great. And that was from like a Meetup group, you said, those Meetup, what is it? Meetup.com?
It's on Meetup New York.
Yeah.
It used to be like live at the Old Stonehouse, and Pearl now runs it. It's been really good. I did 2 oil paintings that I'm like super ecstatic with.
Wow.
From last session. They were like little pieces like this, 10-minute oil paintings.
10 minutes.
Yeah, you should see them. They're real good. They will blow you away. I mean, I don't know. I'm tooting my own horn, but like, I love them, and I was in the zone.
Send me some photos. I'd love to see them.
Yeah.
It's I'm not an oil painter. Oil paints are not my friend. I've never got into that. I've done acrylic, I've done gouache, I've done watercolor, but oils I've never attempted.
I love oils.
Yeah.
I started oils. My dad gave me a set when I moved on my own at 18. He had a set because he always wanted to do it, and then he had this painting he never finished, and then he gave me those, and I was like living on my own. There's a book there. I've actually been making notes. It's one of the book ideas that I have. I have like a folder with all these notes from that period when I was on my own, and all the things I was reading and all the things I was trying. And it's kind of like a coming of age thing that I don't have the right angle on yet. But yeah, it's one of my first loves besides drawing.
That's great. That's great, and it sounds like in the future I might have another book of yours I'll be reading. So,
well, there's one coming up as early as this Friday. I'm launching a serialized book. It's called Restless.
Restless.
It's called Restless.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah.
Go for it.
It's called Restless. it's it's a novel, so it's a
Yeah.
fiction,
Yeah.
loosely based on my life as an artist in Ottawa. It's set in Ottawa, and it's about the struggles of a young artist to find love and success.
That's very nice. I like
Yeah,
that. And
you're gonna see the first three chapters up first. I think I'm gonna publish them on Medium,
okay.
and maybe Wattpad. I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I can monetize it on all those platforms, but certainly um, it's coming out, and I've been like writing every day. I have it all written, and I'm writing and editing every day, and I have like the first five chapters pretty tight, and I think I'm going to start with like the first three so people can kind of get a grip on like what's going on. But it's powerful stuff.
That's great. I can't wait to look at it. And you said it's going to appear Friday.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
I've committed to Friday. I was almost going to launch last Friday, but I'm kind of glad to have like a few extra days. But I'm, because I have goals. I want to make sure like I have this ideally completed through the summer. But it's just I just want to give people like summer reading, and this is really good because it's got sex, it's got relationships, it's got like tangible, applicable things about like an artist's life. He's like hustling, he's trying to get shows, he's dealing with rejection, from like things that I was dealing with, like trying to teach there's one scene where like the character is trying to teach adults, but because he doesn't have experience teaching adults yet, he's only been teaching groups like of children. He gets rejected, so he's got to kind of take a compromise, and he's trying to get a show, but he hasn't sold enough with that gallery, and he's only been in group shows. He's trying to do a solo, and then he's trying to find love, and he's going through. He's had some opportunities, but nobody's quite right until he meets the right woman, and he's fighting hard to keep her. And honestly, it's a lot of really cool stuff.
That's very interesting. We're going to get to Annabelle's comment in a moment because it's going to lead to my next question. But it's funny that you wrote something like this. Years ago, I was engaged to someone. It ended, and I wrote a story very similar to what you just mentioned, but it was about dealing with a breakup, getting back into the dating scene while trying to rebuild my art career that kind of disappeared because of her mostly, or well, me, whatever, but it was because of her. And at the end it talks about me like meeting my wife. But I love that you're doing so. I'm never going to publish it. I'm never going to draw it, anything, because after it was kind of a therapeutic thing for me, and it's out of my system. I have no interest in ever drawing it. But I did write it as like a comic script. But it was interesting because, I talk about going to school in there. I was in school for my master's. I talk about creating art. I talk about all this stuff, and it's just great. I can't wait to look and read what you got going on there.
Thank you. And a heads up, it is a fiction because the first chapter is actually pretty steamy. And somebody asked me like, "Whoa, is that?" I said, "It's a fiction. Remember, it's. So it could have happened. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. But consider it a fiction.
So we got Joe Ryan. I think your book sounds inspiring for young art. And thanks for tuning in, Joe. Joe's a regular fan and watcher.
Thanks, Joe.
He's a Hubert School graduate working on his own indie stuff right now.
I don't want to miss Diane Marie.
Yes, I posted, but I'll put it back.
Okay. Diane Marie, hello. I love you. I miss you. She's one of my favorite students of all time. One of the most loving ladies ever. She's in Canada and Ottawa. Super stylish, super fun. Like everything you would imagine. She's a great woman and a great talent. So it's great to see her.
That's great. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. So let's go to Annabelle's question, because this really was going to be my next question. I don't know if I already spoke about this, but I'm just tuning in to tell us about the Big Boss, any future plans. So before we get into the future plans, tell us about the Big Boss comic, how that came about, and where it took you art wise.
Well, Big Boss is actually, it's a long project. Big Boss was a character that I invented in high school, and it's actually it's a kind of a deep thing that I'm not going to get into now, but it was kind of like some sort of projection initially. And anyway, so I published a graphic novel while still in high school. It was had a couple of names. It was like Dark Realms and Dark Number One, and I distributed it. It was like kind of a zine style, and currently, by the way, it's in the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum, so you could find the original art there. And many years later, I worked out with a writer collaborator that helped me like flesh him out more into an assassin. So we put together a 5-issue miniseries, and now that's compiled. It's on Amazon. And then I followed that with my own written and drawn series, Volume 2 series, which is Big Boss Comic, named after my Instagram, because I published one panel a day, 5 days a week for 13 months, and that's what that story is. So he's an assassin. In the graphic novels, he finds out he's got a daughter that he never knew about. Apparently, years ago, he hid it and quit it with her mom, and so he killed her mom. She was like a rival assassin, and the daughter grew up in foster care and such, and trained herself all these years to enact revenge in a Kill Bill sort of way. Okay. And so she and her lover track him down, and they complicate his life, and they get between one of his biggest contracts. He kind of just wants, like one last job, and so they get between that, and they draw him out into this very emotional and deadly final showdown. And that's what that's about.
Interesting. And that's all on Instagram. You could all go read that.
That's on Instagram and Amazon, yeah.
Wow, that's nice. So, and you mentioned that it got into the Billy Ireland Museum, which, by the way, is a great accomplishment. So, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And what are the future plans? Let's answer Annabelle's question. What future plans do we got?
Well, I can't tell you too much, except I do have something in the works. Now, I wrote a feature screenplay that I did 9 drafts of. I sent it for coverage. Some are better than others, and the last draft is pretty good. It's a standalone piece. But I also have another story, too, that I started to write last November during NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah.
It's like a challenge. You try to write 60,000 words.
It's every November.
Yeah, every November.
Yeah.
And so I started it, and I have an outline of that. And that's a little different. And it might come out right after Restless, actually. So if all goes well, I'm juggling a lot of things, because I'm relaunching my school online, and I'm re-recording classes for that. I'm still doing some freelance work for clients, because you can't turn down work.
Never.
And then I'm finishing editing this novel and rewriting, tightening it up. But then it's on the burner. So there is something coming up, and I'm pretty confident that I have a really, really good angle on it finally, because I think the screenplay was like, well, it was different. It's kind of like more almost espionage kind of take on it. It was a different storyline altogether. But this is something that I think would really resonate with audiences, younger audiences too, in a very special way. So, knock on wood, I think it's it's in the lineup right after.
And
that might be serialized as well. And that'll be nice because it'll be coming out and you can kind of have like fun reading.
That's great. Good luck with that. I hope to see it,
Thanks,
very
man.
soon.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
All right. Why don't we move on to one of the main reasons we're here? This book. And I'm just going to give myself a little plug because it has my Get in Tune bookmark, which you can download from getintune.net.
That's a great bookmark.
Thank you. You can download them, print them on cardstock. They're on the, I think it says freebies or download, something like that. You get 2 in the file. Or if you see me at shows, I always have these for free hanging out. Anyway, let's talk about this. It's called It's a Living, Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century, the Ultimate Guide to Success for Artists and Creative Professionals. All right.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I think Joe just asked, like,
yes.
Where can you find it? It's on Amazon.com. You may have to like put the whole title, which is It's a Living, Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century. It'll come up. It's like that cover, or you type in my name and that book, and I only have like this book currently and the 2 graphic novels, so I'll come up.
So, thank you, Diane. She's just go by Diane or Diane Marie. I just want
Diane Marie.
Diane Marie, thank you. Get in Tune, fabulous. Thank you for that. Now we're going to talk about how you came up with this book and stuff, but before we do that, I just want to let people know. I love the way it's broken down. Because even though it's kind of written as an autobiography and kind of I don't want to say like a self-help book, but it's kind of a guide through an autobiography, and I love how you start with your schooling. I love how and I'm talking young schooling, high school, and all the issues you dealt with there, and then how you moved on, and then getting work, and dealing with being young in the industry, and having to learn.
Yeah, the hard way.
Yeah, the hard way through mistakes. I mean, I think we've all done that. Anybody who started young, we've all had to kind of put our ego aside at times and really be like, oh, this is a real business, and learning how to form a business, and then going through this and talking about lots of different things, how to get jobs online, how to use websites and bid on them. I mean, you went through everything that a freelancer today. When I was starting out, a lot of it was word of mouth for me. Yeah. It was, oh, that guy did a good job. Who is the person who worked on that? Can I get his number? That's kind of how I started getting work after applying to a few places. It became word of mouth. And we didn't have these type of websites when I was starting in the industry. So it was great. One of the things I really enjoyed, and I know that some people may disagree with it, but you talked about exercise in here. You talked about eating healthy, because a healthy body and a healthy mind allows you to do your work, to think clearly, to do business. And I'm going to get to you talking about, but let's first get to a couple of comments here. And we'll get to something like this. I once called a lawyer about a client who wouldn't pay me when he left and said it was let it go and earn from it. And, I went through something like that too. I'm not going to share the story, but it costs more to pay a lawyer than to get your $150.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, it's not worth it. I've had some tough clients like that myself. I mean, almost everybody has. Usually the cheapest clients I write in It's a Living are the most difficult. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you have to suck it up, and I don't want to bring up my own bad feelings, but there's a lot of situations where I've lost money. I've even outsourced and the guy disappeared, overseas. I paid in advance, and he kind of begged me for, I've had lots of, these things, so that's the thing, the difference, it's like Rocky says, if you got to take the punches and keep moving, so if you're in it to win it, you just you take little losses, and you take calculated risks, and you don't always win, but you keep moving, and it's a snowball, like Buffett says. So it's a snowball, and everything just kind of builds upon it, and that's what's wonderful about like a career in the arts. You're only building. It's like everything. And then if you keep your mind sharp, if you exercise, you eat healthy, like Hulk Hogan said, you take your vitamins. I don't know, I'm just quoting all these people. Okay. So, but then, like, it's like you're truly like a fine wine, like a vineyard, like when you're youthful, it's like, the wine isn't that great, but then the prime is so long, and even when like, the vineyard is late in age, you can still get a couple of good grapes, good shots, even Picasso in like 90, he died at like 93 or something like that. He had that beautiful, phenomenal Three Musketeers show, like where he was just copying like from the Three Musketeer movies, and he had all these kind of like Velasquez type interpretations, and they were phenomenal. They were a little drippy and stuff, but man, he still had it.
Yeah.
So keep yourself sharp. Keep yourself like it's a muscle, the mind too.
Yeah. Joe Ryan asks about the book you were talking about earlier that you're going to be posting online. Where are the websites he can find that on?
Well, the graphic novels, the Big Boss graphic novels, are on Amazon. If you Google my name, you'll see them. I have a newsletter that I'm going to announce, Restless, which is the novel. It's a novel. Okay. It's only written, but I'm trying to include like artwork within each chapter. We'll have some sort of related image. But the novel, add me to Facebook because I'm going to announce it here, and I have a newsletter, and I'm just kind of like I don't have a big marketing machine, but that's coming up, and it'll be published on Medium.com, which is typically for articles, but I like the formatting, so it'll go there. It might go on a couple of other websites, but again, like it'll be on my Facebook. Where I'm going to publish. I'm just trying to. That's what I took the extra week for, because I was testing Tapas and Wattpad. I created accounts, and I try to upload things to see how much time it's going to take me if I commit to, like, let's say publishing on 3, who knows, maybe 4 platforms. It could be too much, like to do all that in one day. It could be my whole day's gone. I can't even answer emails, So. So it'll for sure be on Medium, and hopefully I get some traction there, because they do have a section for fiction, although most of their readers are for short, 5 to 15-minute articles typically. But, it's a fun exercise. I looked at it because, like, I'm putting up the chapters, and then I'm trying to add kind of appealing titles to it, that might kind of hook readers that want to learn about freelancing, as well as people that like love stories and other action, other stuff. Yeah.
All right. George Medina is tuning in.
Yep.
He just got off his show. Sorry I couldn't watch yours because I was finishing some stuff up before I went on. Jonathan says, I can't wait to read the novel. I know it'll be great. I'm sure it will.
Thanks, buddy. I would love to hear what you think. Yeah. I mean, I love to know what everybody thinks, because this is like different. It's a novel, and although It's a Living has novel type aspects to it, and certainly the last chapter, which is titled Apollo's Prisoner, is definitely like unlike what you would expect from a business or self-help book. And I wrote it, that chapter and the prior one on kind of sustainability as an artist. I feel like are my best written chapters, and I feel like I'm really like I felt myself maturing. And there's like nice beats to the writing, so I'm an artist, I'm striving for things. I'm not just putting words on paper for no reason, I'm sculpting.
So Annabelle has a question. Do you have a favorite type of project besides paying, specifically where you really are excited to do it and it's more for the fun than work for you?
Project, I mean, I love oil painting lately. Yeah, I've been. I have a bunch of canvases that I prepped, and it's hard to explain. But I mean, I've been, prepping them with spray paint. I kind of put a coat of oil, but then I took them out in the lawn across the way in the park, and I just like spray painted patterns and stuff. And I've been noting ideas. A couple of them I finished. I used the model to reference on a couple of them, and there's nice stuff. I have ideas, and then I did those little 2 oil paintings while life drawing, real quick sketches. I did another one that I recorded part of it, so I haven't shown it yet because I've been trying to edit this video so I could kind of release it with this little, kind of progress video. But yeah, and I'm staring at one that's drawing, so, and there's a canvas. I don't know if you can see, but there's a canvas in the corner.
I can give you the full screen. Hold on.
So yeah, there's a canvas there, but that's going to be a commission. Mm-hmm. Yeah, oil paintings, it excites me. I love it. And I'm trying new things. I'm trying more colorful things, and I love it. It's kind of traditional, I recently, I didn't announce it because I don't kind of announce these kind of things because I don't want to make the client in the situation feel like I'm leveraging. Mm-hmm. But I sold an artwork to a very high-end collector that has a lot of Warhols and Dalis and Picassos, you name it, Damien Hirst, Coons.
That's awesome.
Mind you, I sold it for a pittance because I don't think he values me on the same level, which rightfully, these guys are a big, auction house artists. But I sold a piece to him recently, and I'm working on a commission as well as a kind of a follow-up to that sale. So that's kind of been really nice, in a way, because it's nice to be in a point in my career where hey, I've got a couple things that aren't necessarily on display in museums, but they're in archive, and I just sold to a very high-end collector, and it's something,
Yeah,
it's a living.
Yes, it's a living. So, and that's actually something interesting, because you bring up working in here as a fine artist. If you want to use the term, a commercial artist, as an illustrator, as an animator. I think you even mentioned writing a bit in here, which is something.
The book is written.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, as a freelance writer, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I wrote. Well, actually, this is going to give it away, but I for that collector, I ghost wrote parts of his book, and I edited it. So and I waited several years to get that call of, I would actually like to have one of your works. So I helped him with that book, and then I waited patiently, and came around, and it was very touching.
That's great. So tell me, why did you want to write this book?
Oh, I think you started on that question earlier. So
yeah, then we sidetracked. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Well, I remember the day, and initially, it started as an autobiography because I love like memories, and I when I first started writing, as a kid, and I used to be journals, so I used to journal a lot. I used to write poetry, and that was kind of it. I never really wrote fiction until like more recently,
Yeah.
Till screenplay writing probably. Maybe 5-6 years ago, that I was writing fiction. So it started as a memoir or a biography, and then over the period that I wrote it, which was 2.5 years that it took me to write, it morphed, and I realized actually I already knew from the beginning, like my working title from the beginning was going to be "If You Don't Know Me by Now," which is like an old R&B song by Melvin and the Blue Notes. And so it's like, if you don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. So it was kind of like a little swan song to my career, the way I saw it. So I figured, like, who was going to read it? Like, it's just my close circle, and maybe some parts that I thought were really intriguing, like my love conquests, or just weird, eccentric ideas, delusions of grandeur that I had, like at the beginning, certainly of my career, where I was just kind of like lost. I was broke, and just I had some eccentric thoughts, and even a breakdown that I wrote about in It's a Living, a very stressful time. So it's like, so rather than like focus on those, which might not help anyone, that much, and yeah, by no means am I a psychologist, so I didn't want to focus on those, but like it morphed into something that was practical. That's the long story. And by the end, I mean, I cut out a lot of things that were like not practical. So by the end, some things remained that were edited, because you notice like the beginning of the book is kind of like, backstory, and like, but then it quickly gets into like my regiment as a freelancer. And then the way the book ends is more cerebral and analytical in a way, about like, the meaning of life and why we choose to be artists, and whether we choose to be artists, so it gets into deeper levels, but it builds like that. And then right in the middle is freelancing online, the chapter by that title, and that's where you get like, punch after punch of sales techniques, and even my template of what I write to clients.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really enjoyed that, because it is very something editable.
Yeah.
That you could really make your own, but having that introduction, sometimes that's the hard thing. How do people work? You talk about, and I think you even give a sample contract.
Yeah, I have a sample contract for what I use for comics, when I draw comics. So I have a long contract for that, that you could copy and paste if you have like a the Kindle version. I think you could probably use and alter. So it stipulates things like back end and like aspects of the agreement, and then I also have my copyright transfer agreement.
That was something I really liked on there, because I've read a lot of contracts for people, those intro contracts for people starting out, and they don't talk about copyrights and how important it is that artists, unless you actually, well, technically once you create art, unless it's like work for hire, you own that piece of work, and if you don't go and legally protect it, stuff could happen with it. So for, I think it's what now, $75 for the copyright office.
Yeah, last I checked, it was like 65, and then if you could also copyright things through Writers of America,
Is it Writers Guild? I think
Writers
Writers
Guild of
Guild. Yeah,
America,
yeah,
WGA.
yeah,
They have an East Coast and West Coast, and that's only $25. So I've
yeah.
copywritten uh, items with both. So,
No, that's very smart to do. And yeah, but that's the thing. You talk about all these different things in the book, and a lot of people don't understand it. I learned copyrights. I started learning about them at 16 years old because my father saw an article in the newspaper about the Disney's Gargoyles cartoon, and there was a guy locally who said he created them and actually owned them, and went up against Disney in a lawsuit. And I met the guy years earlier working at an art center together.
did he?
But
Did he create them?
Well, it's not really my story to share.
But did the court decide he had legs or what?
No, the court didn't decide it. But it was because, but from my understanding, it was because he didn't copyright properly. He did the old mail to yourself, which doesn't stand up in court when you have a legal document.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's, like I said, it's his story to tell. But this is from the newspaper article. I'm not saying anything that isn't public knowledge to my knowledge, because when I was 16, it was many years ago. But I started learning about that and how to go about protecting. I learned about trademarks. All because I read a newspaper article at a young age, and I wanted to learn how to protect myself. A lot of people don't understand that. It's confusing to a lot of people. And I like that you talk about that. You even mentioned about licensing your work. You made a comment. It's a short little piece, a couple of sentences, but you licensed something to a guy, say, for 1 or 2 years that he had.
That wasn't like, it wasn't a thing that I had often. I mean I can only think of like a couple situations, but the scenario, one example was it was like a client that really liked an image that I posted, and she didn't want to buy it, or wanted kind of a rebate or something like that, and I just kind of like invented like this little contract. I said, look, you can have it, I'll license it for, I gave it to her for like $45 or something like that. It was just like a silhouette, of a woman. And I said, like, you're welcome to do whatever you want with it for like 1 to 2 years or whatever the contract was. And it's cash.
It is another form for artists to make money. That's how you get all textiles and merchant, blankets and mugs and all that stuff is all licensing.
That was like a small isolated example, but there's sites where you just license, whether it's photographs or stock images. So it's almost licensing, like when I have like works, like designs on Redbubble, it's kind of like licensing.
It's kind
of so that I make residual income from people that print my designs on products.
And you did you mentioned things like Adobe Stock and things, other places people can go, and that's kind of like licensing. With those websites. Well, it is.
Because you have to like subscribe to different licensing features.
So we're going to get back to the book, but I want to answer Jonathan's question that's been down there for a little bit. He says, if you had one last writing work, what category of writing would it be, and what would it be centered around or about?
I don't want to say I would have one last, but I'll tell you this: I'm super excited about Restless, because it's like I'm combining, an artist's love life with actual things that he goes through, through his career, and I'm excited about that, and I feel like it's a really fun angle for me to explore too, because I get to like delve into that period, because it's actually when I first structured it I like took that period in my life back in Canada, and I saw, like, because I was writing screenplays, so then I saw a hero's journey within that year, and I saw a story, so I wrote it out into a 12-page outline, and then I adapted it into a screenplay, and then that screenplay last year, because of COVID, I kind of, gave up my dream to like produce an indie film of it. It may recur once I rewrite this. I might convert it back, and who knows? But um, but yeah, so that's kind of what it evolves. So I'm really excited about this book because I feel like it has like the best of all worlds, and I get to kind of remove myself from the equation because when you write a nonfiction, it's tough to take criticism, because it's like you kind of have biased opinions, and sometimes not everything's popular, to everybody. Yeah. So then it's tough, and I remember in the beta reading stage, I had some kind of like call outs, and it was tough, and I had to do a lot of self-analysis, like as to like, wow, like my perceptions of certain situations were wrong,
Yeah.
So now this way, it's not me, it's the character. So it's the character, and he's going through a journey, and it, I am treating it like that. So and I'm growing as an artist. So this, everything that I'm working on and everything that I have in the horizon is, one, the thing that I'm most excited about, and two, the thing that I'm most growing with, and that's particularly why I'm excited. So, and I'm challenging myself. So this I'm excited about. Yeah. So Restless, it's coming out through the summer. Yeah. Get your summer reading on.
That sounds. It sounds like a great story. It really does. I mean, I think a lot of people, you have something in there for everybody.
I hope so. I'm trying. I'm just trying.
And that's what art is. You just try something, see if it works, and hope it does. Getting back to the book, there's other things, and here's the thing: I don't want you elaborating on too much because I want people to buy the book. I want people to buy it. I want them to read it for themselves. It's honestly not a long book when you look at it. It's like 210 pages or something.
And it's got pictures, so
yeah, 216 pages with pictures and contracts and and samples and stuff. It's an easy read, but there are things that I like, and I'm just going to go to the table of contents real quick, and I'm just going to talk about your chapter titles and just tell people what they do. So obviously you got your introduction. Then chapter 1 is the importance of a strong foundation. So that's more of your childhood, how you got started.
And art school too.
Yeah,
and I think that's the chapter where, do I get into working at Harvey's? I was like working at a fast food place.
I believe you talk about it in that chapter.
So
because you do mention it on and off throughout a little bit where it's relevant.
There's a great segment there that I really like that stood out to me, which was this worker that was there, because I took a year off between like high school and college, and then I was reading books on my own. I was reading like tough books like Nietzsche and Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and things like I had a textbook about religions of the world. I was really doing a lot of searching and trying to tackle a lot of things on my own, and maybe that's why I developed this keen self-awareness and just about existence itself. And then I would watch like coworkers, and there was like this one coworker that was like, he was 40, and I was like 20, 19 or 20, and he was 40 and at that job, and I mean, I'll kind of Cole's notes it, but there was an incident in my time working there where I felt that he might have sabotaged himself and injured himself on purpose, just so you can get workers' compensation.
And
That's just in my head, but
I will say,
yeah.
can I interrupt you?
Yeah, let me know what you thought of
well,
that.
here's the thing. I'm not going to give away anything.
Yeah.
But I have worked, in high school and early college, before I went to art full time, I worked as a grill cook in places.
Yeah.
I started at McDonald's. I've worked in Friendlies. I worked in a Greek restaurant. Well, we prep stuff, but it was more of a fast food type of thing. So I've known people like the guy you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I have a strange feeling in your head, because I've read it. After I knew his age, I read it the same way that you were thinking. Let's see. Here's a doozy for you both. Is there a difference between fine art and illustration? What is it from your perspective? I'll give you the first comment there.
Okay. Well, there is. Illustration technically is, and that's a great question. Thank you, Annabelle. Technically, illustration is for magazines and publications. An illustration is technically an interpretation of typically literature. An illustration is from literature. A prime example would be the illustrations within Alice in Wonderland, or Alice Through the Looking Glass. Those Lewis Carroll, or Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. If anybody's come across that, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So or well, New Yorker cartoons are cartoons. So those are for periodicals. But yeah, so that's the difference. And fine art is the objectives. The objectives are different, because in fine art, it could be a drawing, it could be a work on paper, and that can still be considered fine art. But what the artist is trying to convey is different. They're saying something deeper. Like when an artist does a fine artwork, they're tackling philosophical ideas in the way I interpret it, or they're painting for beauty's sake. If they're painting a model, whereas an illustration conveys either a sequence or like an actual story.
Okay, I like that. I like that definition. I'm gonna kind of agree with it. I've always the only difference is, though, I would say that illustrations can also convey philosophical thoughts, social commentary.
Social commentary for sure. Yeah.
Like if you look at especially if you go to comics and cartoons, which is what I talk about a lot on here.
Yeah.
Single panel gag strips. You look at something like Calvin and Hobbes. Bill Watterson tackled a lot of philosophical questions.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
In that, so I don't know if to me, the difference usually is what is the final output. Is this meant to hang in a museum, or is this meant to hang, on your bookshelf? You know what I mean? Like, I think is an illustration falls to me under more commercial art, whereas fine art, I think gallery, but I think they can tackle the same topics. It just might be done differently.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. But and illustrations also, there's more parameters for it, like it's usually figurative or it's very technical. You could have illustrations of buildings, like draftsmanship type things. Yeah, it's debatable for sure.
Let's see, we got Kerwin Johnson, an artist more.
Hey, Kerwin, thanks for coming.
Reflection of society at the time it was created for sake of art. Yeah. That's a nice definition.
Absolutely, thanks.
Thanks for the question. That was a great question. We haven't
Yeah.
had a question like that on the show ever, and I really appreciate the question like that. Let's just move on to more of the chapters, so we can kind of give people an idea of what they're going to read when they purchase this book.
Sure.
Chapter 2 is Adapt or You Won't Survive. I've read that one.
I think that was, maybe that story was in Adapt or You Won't Survive, the Harvey's one.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'll be honest, you guys at home, I'm a slow reader. I grew up with a reading issue. I'm better, much better now, and I read, but I still read slow. And because of my scheduling, what should have taken me really a day to sit down and read took me about almost a full month, just scheduling wise. So I read chapter 2 a while ago, but I've enjoyed, and I've told you this privately. When I pick up your book to read, I don't want to put it down. I put it down as I got to cook dinner, or I got to work on a freelance project, or I need to go to sleep. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to go to work the next day. Like, that's how it was for me. But as I pick up and I read, it's one of those things that just kept me wanting to go. So if I started this with nothing to do, like on a Saturday, I would have finished this book in a few hours. It really was something I don't want to put down.
Thank you. I think I recall like what was in that chapter. I think the kind of like the great piece in that is I think it's a 5-6 page sequence just about trying to do a book launch.
Yeah,
I think that was in that chapter.
I think so.
And the big failure in that, but yet like there's still a redeeming win. Because the book that I tried to launch initially is in the National Gallery of Canada now.
Yes, the very last copy, by the way, you guys.
Very last copy. I don't even have a copy myself, which is kind of stupid of me. But when I visit Ottawa, I think I'll try to pop by and schedule like for them to bring it out. There's a really great sequence that I'm very proud of, and I workshopped that. If it's in that chapter, if I recall, I workshopped that, and it's pretty tight. It's like very, some of the tightest writing in there, and that was a lot of stuff that was like reworked. Things that like I perceived in the situation that I had to like kind of edit. So there's like, I mean, the book back then was called True Fiction. So, it's funny when you write nonfiction, you still have to consider, traditional fiction writing techniques. You have to make the story compelling. And whether it's like in the sequence, the way you describe things, or like in the wording you choose, to make it art, to tell, like, to make it interesting to read, like the words have to dance.
Yeah. That's a very nice explanation there. Let me just put up this comment because I love what he says. Growing. His last slow reading is called Immersing One book. My friend, a fellow slow reader. So thank you.
Guilty as well.
Yeah.
I'm like notoriously very slow in reading, and I read like I get like the characters and the scenes, but then I fall in love with stuff, and I love the way writers put together the words, because I read a lot of poetry. I may have read more poetry than any other thing, especially in my teens.
Thank you for this comment, Annabelle. You're both creators I look to aspire to emulate. Class acts for sure. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. So I love you, Annabelle.
You're a great guy. I look forward to hanging out this weekend. Chapter 3, Live to Work, Don't Work to Live.
Oh, yeah. This is all... Well, let me explain that for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Some people work to live. They work a job they don't like, and, they go on vacation, and, every penny they earn, they try to give themselves a life,
Yeah.
But some people live to work. Their life is making things, whether it's like an artwork, whether even if somebody that loves to work because they have their own business, like whether it's even selling hot dogs on the street, or whatever
Yeah.
you have, but if they love it, that's what they live for. So that chapter, that's what the expression means, but that chapter covers every habit that I endorse, that I've developed and endorse during my freelancing career to sustain other freelancers and other artists in their careers. So, everything from my routines of waking up at a certain time, and I list that. I actually list like my personal schedule, and I give other examples. Like Benjamin Franklin had a very famous one,
Yeah.
where he like woke up at 4, went to bed at 10, and all the in between. And then exercise. I discuss diet and certain foods, and friendships and relationships, and fun, networking, things like that. Like all aspects of your business and personal life, and how to balance that.
Yeah. And that's a great chapter. And like I said before, I think that's an important chapter. And there was one of my favorites because a lot of people don't think like that. People working from home. And I think people are changing with how the pandemic affected us. Everyone's working. There are people still. My wife's still working from home. And I don't know if or when she'll be going back to the office. But a lot of companies are keeping people working from home. So even if you're not freelancing, you're working, it's a nice idea to have a set schedule to be healthy, because you could be working from your dining room table or your couch, and now instead where you didn't have access to food because you're waiting for lunchtime, you just go get a bag of chips out and just sit and eat crappy for the whole day and just snack.
Yeah.
And
it's going to haunt you.
Yeah. So it's nice that you give people, hey, look, well, this is how I am. I'm not saying you have to eat my way, but it's a good idea to find out what's healthy for you.
Yeah. Well, some people don't abide by that. And actually, that was a criticism from a peer. We did not agree. I sent him the book too for a review, and we couldn't. He disagreed. He said he thought I wasted time discussing that, and that was totally irrelevant to an artist's career. But I don't think it is, especially if you do it full time like me. I mean, I have to treat it like a business. It's not like it's a hobby when I have a drink and then I'm relaxed and I'm just chilling and I'm doing my thing after work or on a late night weekend or something. It's not like that for me. I mean, if I take those late hours, it's either I'm completing client work or I'm working on my novels or some IP, intellectual property, that I'm developing, and it's like I'm juggling that, but everything is like regimented. And for me to function like a machine, then my body has to feel great. I can't I can't produce well if I got like an ice cream headache, It's just like, how am I supposed to function, So I don't know. I think it's very important. I mean, people would agree, or some people that just don't want to exercise. You can't convince them, and they could frown upon that chapter because they're like, oh, well, this guy's like, I don't want to do that, and then I want to feel bad about myself because I don't want to do it. So I would rather just not deal with it, So hey, maybe that is not for you. Skip to the sales chapters.
Which is coming up next very soon. Annabelle says, Jordan Peterson supports your argument about being successful, including fitness and a healthy diet.
Fellow Canadian, which is not very popular in some circles, but I've read his book. Admittedly, I don't know if that's going to get me what's the blacklisted or something, but I read his book.
Next chapter, we're on chapter 4, branding and marketing. This was a chapter I found very interesting. In this chapter, I believe you talk about when you were talking about your, I think you talked about your printing company, your small press in that chapter.
Yeah.
And you talked about the name and how it wasn't maybe the best name for a business to start off with.
No.
But I liked your, well, everything here I think is really fleshed out. Um, but you get ideas in that chapter on how to go about starting to sell yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that was
A lot of what not to do too.
yes.
Is that where I mentioned that when I was doing selling art in cafes and doing like small, doing live painting in bars.
I think that comes later on.
Oh,
I
was it?
think
Okay.
this is
Okay.
I think branding and marketing may have the story, and I don't want to spoil anything. When you were trying to get an art show, I think it was at the Capitol building.
I'll
Was that?
spoil it because I don't remember.
I don't want to ruin it, but there was supposed to be an event at a building. I think it was the Capitol building, and you were looking to have an art show, and you were bringing artists in.
Oh no, that was in the prior chapter where the book launch. That was the book launch.
Okay, the book launch. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was in the what you call it. Anyway, it was a previous chapter, two chapters before, I think. But I talk about the film, I think, in the marketing, and how having a consistent brand, and because it's very much focused, the book, on freelancing. So I discuss like reputation. So being available, being consistent, developing your portfolio for
okay. Yes.
If I remember correctly.
That sounds about right. Jonathan says that is a great bit of advice and takes a lot of courage to commit to. I think to live to work rather than to work to live. But you did it. Never looked back. Rather great stuff.
Thank you. Well, I don't. I always say it's.
Thank you, Kerwin.
There's no turning back.
Yeah.
I'm too far in.
Yeah, it's hard when you've been doing it for so long, and then you have to take a job somewhere else. When a client is always your boss, but you've made your own hours, you doing your own thing, and then having to say, well, freelance isn't really working out, to go somewhere else, and your whole lifestyle changes, your whole mentality. Because for a while, you technically were your own boss. You set your hours, you did it the way you wanted to do it. Now you are confined, and it might be hard.
Well, I've never gone astray. I mean, I think like at the worst is when work was dry and I needed to hustle, I would just apply to everything, and I would like send out. I think the latest was a few years ago. I was in New York, and then I kind of like I was entertaining some friends, and anyway, so it was like it just caught up to me, and I needed to hustle because I was like, I wasn't working for a few weeks, and I needed jobs right away, and I applied everywhere. I applied online, and then I even applied to some teaching position out in Hoboken. But for me, because I'm not Upper West Side, but above that, I'm Washington Heights.
Okay.
It was like an hour and a half to get to Hoboken each way, on the path. And then so I went in, I sat through like a lesson unpaid. And then she loved me, she wanted me because I had all this experience. I had my own art school in Canada. I had some curriculum that I could bring. But yeah, I even though, well, by the time I got home after like that long day, 3 hours just on the train, an hour and a half, 2 with her, I had to turn it down because it just wasn't worth it, because she was going to pay like, I think, $20 an hour or something like that. It was just, So,
I get it.
But luckily, by the time I got home, I had some other responses from bids online, and within a couple of days, I had like a short list of clients, and then within 1 to 2 weeks of that, I had payouts.
That's great. And speaking of winning bids online, your next chapter is called Freelancing Online.
Yeah.
Where you talk about some of the websites like Upworks and Guru and a few of the others, and you really talk about bidding and how it works. And that's where you give your sample intro. I think that might also be a sample contract in that chapter.
Yeah, it's at the end of the chapter. Yeah, there's a contract.
But what I like is you talk about the actual process. You talk about, and this is something you guys, he goes into more detail in the book, but you need to, when you sign up for these websites, you're technically paying to bid on things and hoping to get a response. So
you pay. You have to buy on Upwork. You have to buy connects, which is I don't even know how they figure this out, because it's like some projects will cost you 6 connects. Some will be 1. 2 to 4 is like the average, and I don't know what they base it on, whether it's like the budget or based. I don't know what they base it on. So then, over years, well, I mean, you could, with my guide, you can kind of like get a sense of what you should spend your time on, and spend your time you should, because it's like once you choose based on like the criteria I tell you, once you evaluate whether that one project, whether it's a serious client, whether they have prior reviews, whether they are verified, they have a verified payment method, they're ready to start transferring money. These are things, that are important. And then whether they're in their description, they seem like they have an interesting, that you're suitable for it, for one. They sometimes list the budget, but if the budget is too low, I talk about like how you then have to read their description and use some psychology and figure out if you need to negotiate, would they be flexible? Is this a reasonable person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes you like the project, it's like a comic book, and we know everybody's trying to make a comic book, and half the people have decent money. You got to build a relationship, make a connection, and make the contract reasonable for all parties involved.
No, and I like that, and I like also in there, and you go into more detail about this, so I'm not giving anything really away.
I don't mind like sharing things, because people forget, so it's like I don't mind like kind of stimulating like their imagination as to what's actually in the book, and then they can like revisit it and highlight it if they want.
I like that you talk about also on these, because I'll tell you right now, I've signed up for sites like Upwork, but I've never actually used it. I just haven't had a chance to really sit down and go through it or anything. But you talk about possibly offering packages and upselling. And upselling is something I learned to do back when working at McDonald's, where it's like, oh, would you like an apple pie with that? Like that type of stuff. I always go think back to my days where I learned to upsell, or when I worked for the Disney store in high school. And how do you get a guest, which they call their customers, to not just buy that snow globe that you just sold them, but upsell them to something else. So there are ways of doing things. And in my head, reading that, I'm like, well, if I ever use this and I want to put them, like in my head, I already know, because I understand upselling, and I understand packages because I've done that with it in the back. I think it's in the best.
Yeah, I agree. I don't encourage people to go into any project to upsell. What's for me, like once you build a career and reputation, then actually upselling kind of comes a little bit natural, because you'll bid on a specific project, and then the client finds out that you have all this experience. And then they're like, well, can you help me with this and that? And then you go, sure, Like, that's what I'm here for. And then, you coddle them, and like,
Yeah.
you nurture that relationship.
Kerwin asks, are the connects that you mentioned similar to the commissions you're paying the site?
No. Great question, Kerwin, because that's a specific. So, no, that's one of the things that I kind of, even in the book, I think I comment about it. There's the fees are separate. So Connect is a freelancer has to buy credits, and I think they're like, you get maybe 20 connects for like $9, or 40 connects for $9 or something. And then, each project is, like I said, as low as one connect, but typically 2 or 4, sometimes 6. So then you spend those, and then so you have to ration them very wisely. That's why you got to read everything, so you don't waste them, and then you're just all spent, and then you got no work coming in.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are your own investment. And then once you get the project, the client puts money in a milestone. You complete any given milestone, you invoice, they release, and then if the project is under $500, then you pay a 20% commission. Once you go over $500, then I think it goes to 15. Once over 1,000, then it goes to 10% commission. But I don't think you can even go lower than 10% unless you go like $10,000 per client or more. And I've had it like sometimes, like a client, they like me and they want to rehire me, and then they'll just create a new project, and they're like small little projects, like under 500. And so then sometimes I tell them, like, hey, let's try to do it under here, because they want to write a review and then close it. So once they write a review, it's closed. So yeah, so sometimes that happens. You complete one task, they write a review, and it's closed, and then they come back to you, they message you, and then they have to create a new project. So sometimes that happens. So I've had like clients like a few thousand each, but they're like 3-4 different projects. So yeah, so you always pay commission, always. And that's kind of my pet peeve, because it's sometimes common, like, to get like small projects, and you have to get a lot of them at the same time, and do some juggling as a freelancer. So when you pay 20% commission, that's steep. So a Guru is 9% even all the time. I've been with Guru for the longest. So yeah, but Upwork is they have good screens and very, very good projects. Not a lot of spam at all. They catch everything. Very good stuff. I'm a top-rated freelancer there, but I haven't had to bid in like a few months now, because I've had recurrent clients. So I get emails from them like, these projects might interest you, and occasionally I get invitations to projects. I don't know based on what. I think like I get recommended by the staff. So I typically always, if I'm fitted, I'll bid on those invitations. But I haven't had to look, luckily, knock on wood. So
that's great. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks.
I think that's a good thing. Chapter 6 is called Dealing with Clients, the fun part of the job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is more specifically negotiations. Negotiations, referrals. When you're referred, and the responsibility, because when you're referred, it's like, especially through a previous client or peer, you're responsible to do a good job, because you're not only representing yourself, but you're representing the person that referred you. So it's like, if you rub the person the wrong way, or the client the wrong way, that kind of could create 2 relationships. Well, maybe even 3. Between you and the person that referred you, and you and new client, and them, and the person that referred you.
So Kerwin says sounds well worth it, particularly vetting projects. Thanks.
Yeah.
You got a nice long comment here from
I
Diane
see
Marie.
that.
She goes, I always knew you belonged in New York City. Amazing talents, amazing, talented, smart, and you always made us students take our lessons serious, which made us better and a detailed artist. I loved your art school in Ottawa. You're a very respected and awesome teacher because you encouraged your students to believe in ourselves. You always took art seriously. That made us take art serious.
Thank you, Diane Marie.
That is
Thank
a
you.
great compliment. As an educator myself, hearing things like that is from past students is fantastic, and it's great that you stay in contact with them. I taught at a regular college regularly for 16 years, and there's about, I'd say, 12 to 15 of my past students I'm in contact with.
Yeah.
I don't want to say we talk often, but we're connected through social media. Once in a while, they'll message me or comment on one of my drawings or something. I recently, actually, this was a really nice one. I recently got an Instagram message from a student who just posted his webcomic a couple of weeks ago. I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it, but the artwork is gorgeous.
Wow.
And he told me about how just even talking comics with me was a great thing. But yeah, no, Diane Marie, that is a fantastic.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that. Chapter 7, creating and selling fine art.
Right. Well, because that's kind of like what I wanted to do from the beginning, because my idea was I love self-publishing and publishing in general. And when I registered the small press, I thought, like, I wanted to make art, like bigger than life art, and then publish that in a sequence in a book, and have the exhibit and have the book, and that was kind of the thing. So I did a lot of art shows, yeah. So I talk about starting out in cafes, different kind of gigs, working up to city shows, applying for that. What else do I cover? Private galleries. I think I mentioned like the exclusivity of some galleries, where like you're exclusive with them, but then they could put, if you're not selling, they're just going to have you in storage, but then you're exclusive, so then you're not making sales, you're not being seen, So the way I do it now is like, well, I've never been exclusive with a gallery, and I just sell one-to-one. I had a fun time last August where I was very inspired, and I did a series of works on paper, and I just posted them and on Facebook, and was lucky enough to sell a few, and that was encouraging. It justified like my days, because I figured it was nice, because I remember the first time I was inspired for that. I took a whole day off. I didn't even answer emails. I didn't turn on the computer, and I did about 5 works on paper, I think, maybe more. just inspired. It was a whole new technique, and then the next, I think that night, I posted like 2 of them maybe, and then by morning I sold one. It was only like $200, but it paid for my day. I figured, like, if I make $200 a day, that's good. That's like a day paid, So, because I did nothing that day, except for, like, I didn't take care of anything. So these are like little comforts, and then I kept doing that, and I turned it into a course. So I turned that technique into a video tutorial. Mm-hmm. So. I talk about like the gestation period of some of my oil paintings that I do in a short period. but then there's like a few days where I plan, sometimes months. I'm building up to this great masterpiece, and then I'm like releasing it. Like that's the way I used to do it more. But I still have these canvases that are just there. I see them every day. I think about them now and again. When I'm working on commissions, I prep them or add something, and then the bulk of them, kind of like Frazetta, like is done in a period of a couple of days.
Yeah.
Some of them, except for the large ones. Now I only do small ones, but in the book there's photographs of some of the.
Yeah, there's one that's even taller than you, and you seem to be a pretty tall guy.
I'm not tall. I just take good photos.
It's actually interesting you mentioned Frazetta, because I'm a huge fan. I think we all are. I mean, I got a Frazetta if I move my camera over there.
Oh yeah.
And I got a Frazetta behind me if I move right there. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah, so I'm a big Frazetta fan. I've actually been to his museum. If you get a chance to go, it's awesome.
It's a regular thing for me.
And I remember reading how he would stay up and just go through it, and then he would be like out the next day. And you talk about how I don't know, you were saying you used to work like that, where you'd be like, day 1 is this, day 2 is this, day 3 is this, and then you're like done for, to catch up.
Yeah, pretty much, because it was like, I used to do small pieces like that in oil or acrylic, where I would like prep the canvas like the previous day, and then like one day was just like nonstop, like 10 hours maybe on average, and then it's done. I'll take a picture at the end of the night where the colors aren't like true, and then I'll like stare at it in bed, and then in the morning, because then I analyze it, and then in the morning most of that day is gone too, because I'm like, even though some of the time I've put all the supplies away going like it's finished, but then I reopen, sometimes squeeze only like a color or two, and like and I'm touching it up, tweaking it, so that if when I have done paintings in 3 days, that day after the third day is like it's just tweaking all day. It's like it's a day lost.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, because it sounds like you might be a little bit like me. So when I'm working on a big project and I spend hours in my studio, like say I'm literally in here 10, 12 hours just working, and I'm like, I'm dead tired. I know I need to go to sleep, whatever it is. But I can't fall asleep, because all I'm doing is thinking about the work I just spent and how much I want to complete it, or I want to, or the things I know in my head I already want to correct, or did I do that? And you just want to get back out of bed and go back to work. Are you like that too?
Yeah, I have, and that's actually why my novel is called Restless.
Yeah,
it's exactly the reason, because that's where I got the title, because I kept waking up. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah,
I would keep waking up. I mean, in the novel, it can have multiple meanings, like restless in relationships, not settling, or restless in like your ambitions in your career, like always striving for more. But the origin for me was because of those nights, and I associated it with like anxiety, and I've been working on that. But it was partially because I had all these ideas. I would it started last year during COVID, especially because I was trying to plan my next project, and I was mapping out. I was watching a lot of tutorials on YouTube about like different platforms, and I was thinking about webtoons, perhaps like doing a graphic novel. But the schedule seemed like the production schedule was undoable for me to be able to still eke out a living through freelancing, and like there was no guaranteed monetization, So anyway, and then I was doing so much, and so I was like, also when I was considering all the platforms and what medium to work in, I was also outlining different plots, for that market.
Yeah.
So I outlined several, like kind of like the same idea, but variants several times in my one of my notebooks. So based on demographics, like Webtoon is like all like young women and things. And so I was like, if let's say I was publishing my Big Boss comic, I would have to like find like younger, like make them younger or something, or like, and then I have to stylize the character. So I did some character designs that made them look different, so like more anime, all these things. And it was relentless, and yeah. So I mean, I overcame it, and then, but I think it was like part of it was the pandemic that heightened everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then occasionally I still get up, but I try to tune out. I actually developed a meditative method of how to get to sleep finally.
That's fantastic. I just close my eyes and wait till it happens. I try.
Yeah. It's a process, but
Yeah.
once you start getting up and like indulging,
Yeah.
it you can get into a bad habit. So,
Oh yeah, totally.
It took some time to master.
Chapter 8, in business for yourself. Can I tell you, I love this chapter because in there you talk about the different types. You talk about being a sole proprietor. You talk about having an LLC, which is what I am, and you talk about being a corporation and the differences and what kind of like the benefits or the negatives of each. I thought that was because a lot of people don't understand how to protect themselves in that way.
Yeah.
I
appreciate that, but I remember when I wrote it, I thought like I kind of assumed a lot of people did know that, but I included that among other aspects there, like we'll get into, like in intellectual property and such. But I included that portion just because that was an aspect that I wanted to have in my book, like because I wanted my book to have longevity, and that's why some of the examples and anecdotes are a little bit broader, like, and even like you see, you're reading the chapter titles in a way like they're all spread out. There's no subcategories. Once you're in the chapter, you're in for the ride. So a lot of self-help books are like compartmentalized into like 60 sometimes subcategories.
And let me explain. This is and I was waiting till we getting towards the end of the book to explain one of the reasons I truly love this book. And not only am I going to recommend this book for anyone who's like new to freelancing or just trying to freelance, better themselves, maybe wants to leave their job or whatever. As a college professor, I taught I taught a lot of the final classes my students took, and it was a portfolio class. It was a development class. Now I'm not going to knock the school in any way, but I had some disagreements with how certain things should be taught. The main reason is because the school wasn't like a CUNY school. It wasn't a state school. It was a private institution, and their final output was for the students to get jobs at some kind of office. Now, as someone who has worked since he was 18 years old in the business, I knew that wasn't always the case. And freelancing is a great option.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff you talk about in this book, outside of, the freelancing online, because that was just kind of starting, I think, when I left the college, with like Guru and websites like that. I taught them how to freelance. I taught them set up an LLC, up, like I would be like, okay, if you pretend you don't live with your parents, you live on your own. Where do you want to live? how much is rent in that area? How much is your utilities going to buy? How much food? Do you want to go out and have friends and party and do stuff?
Mm.
How much do you go out and drink at a bar? How, you know, like, what are all these prices you pay?
Mm.
And then how do you separate it? And how do you go out and meet your clients? How do you, like, you have a whole thing, I forget which chapter it's in, maybe it's dealing with clients, meeting them. Like you say,
Oh, yeah.
don't meet them at a bar.
Right.
Meet them at like a Starbucks if it's not bad or whatever. Like you
Right.
give advice.
You don't want to drink with the clients.
Exactly. And like those were tips I would give. I basically taught your book as my final class, and I used to get in trouble for doing this.
Well, well, this time maybe you can pitch it as a curriculum.
Yes, and I think
and I can get a large order. That'd be nice.
I still teach at places, just not that college anymore. But I still, and that's not the reason. It's just I when I left the school, it was for other reasons. But this is the kind of stuff I love to talk to young kids. And when I mean young kids, I'm talking young college students looking to start their career. This is perfect. This should be recommended reading in art schools. This I
appreciate it. I'm trying to get some traction on it. It is it's important for people to know that it's self-published. So if you do buy it online on Amazon, leave a review, because that enforces to new readers that don't know me through here. They just kind of like find it on their search or see an ad that it's a good source, and I really, really appreciate it. And like, it almost sounds like, it feels like when you're saying it, it's like a sales pitch. It's not, it's not rehearsed. You're being authentic, and I appreciate that.
It really is. I mean, you still have 2 more chapters we're going to talk about in a second, but this really was, especially talking about the business. It's like I show them websites to go, how to talk to it. Now, I will say this: it's a little more difficult in the tri-state area, meaning New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. But if you leave them, it's a lot easier than dealing, because in New York, in New Jersey and Connecticut, there's a little bit more, and it's probably better to go through a lawyer to set some of these things up than it is to just go on to, like, I forget that website they always used to advertise. There was like a lawyer website where you can
Rocket Lawyer.
Is that it? And you could like get your own contracts, register as a business.
I think it's Rocket Law or Rocket Lawyer. Or something,
but it wasn't. But the steps that you got to do afterwards, registering, it's different. Whether you're a sole proprietor, LLC.
And by state, it's all different.
It's all different. So you got to know. But the tri-state area is just a little on the expensive side for me, as opposed to. When you go into Pennsylvania, go out to Arizona, wherever, it's a lot cheaper if you live in those states.
And I think it's still the case, but I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago, and I think he covered it where like in registering a corporation in Las Vegas, not Las Vegas, but Nevada, you could run it out of state.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's one of the few states, I think Delaware too, but Delaware is better for large corporations. But you could register a corporation in Nevada, and then you just have to pay like a yearly fee for, I forget what the term is, but it's like somebody that kind of, an address, somebody that like
a resident.
Resident or like a maintenance, and there's companies that do that.
Yeah.
But that's an old book, and you'd have to verify that recently.
I'm not too familiar. I work through New York, so chapter. What are we on? Chapter 9 here.
Oh, I just want to mention though, real quick, the In Business for Yourself. I also discuss developing your own intellectual IP, selling digital artworks for recurring income. I have art designs on Redbubble, the book that still sells and is still very relevant, and I'm writing another book, so I'm like creating my own IP. And later this year, because I'm relaunching the school in August, and I may around that time have a how-to book. I just have to make sure that my writing schedule aligns. But uh, but yeah, so I'm putting out like a how-to book, which is in the works, and this novel, which is in a way, Restless is a fictionalized account, but it's so linked to It's a Living,
Yeah.
because it's like it's taking a lot of the life of an artist, the lifestyle part of that, and making it into a novel, like a lot of the best novels I love, like Down and Out in Paris and London, Hunger by Nut Hampson, uh, you know, Portraits of an Artist as a Young Man. These are like this is what I love, and it's fun to write. All the things that you grew up on.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, I love to write too. I haven't really done a lot in years
Mhm.
outside of my comics, but I have a novel in the works. I might wait till November for the nano stuff to do, but
Yeah, man, don't
just,
wait. Just
well,
make your own
just
schedule.
scheduling. Just well, it's
I'll tell you what I do real
yeah.
quick.
You tell yeah, sure.
Well, because right now I'm writing with a group. It's Shut Up and Write. It's a meetup,
I've
and they
heard
have
of them.
so they have different things. You could join a group that's like at 5 o'clock Eastern, or they have it all across the country. I do it between 10 and noon.
Mhm.
2 hours, 40. Chit chat 15 minutes, 45-minute writing. Chit chat 15 minutes, 45-minute writing, and then
Yeah,
before I take care of my clients, I take care of the novel. You know,
that's a
but I
smart
also
idea.
have to commit some time over the weekend. Uh,
Mhm.
to it too, because you know that's not enough time.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, my issue is I have a day job. I come home, I do freelance work, and I have already a side project that I'm working on.
Yeah,
Well, two side projects that I'm working on. So it's just trying to find and
yeah,
organize the time
I
for
know.
it.
Schwarzenegger says sleep less.
Yes, I know.
I tried it. It's easier said than done,
It can be
but
difficult.
it's a good philosophy.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 9, continuance equals success.
Yeah. So some what the continuance uh, means success. So sometimes it's like just the fact that you keep going means
Mhm.
you've done it.
Yeah.
you know, success is it's a mental state. You know, and that's something that I've learned to do over the years is like accept my winnings. And change my definition of success. You know, um, because I don't know. It's like, well, I mean, yeah. So that's what it is. So
Yeah.
it's like I had to come to terms. Like this book doesn't promise that you're going to be like a millionaire, because I'm not a millionaire. I'm nowhere near. Um, and I don't. Like the older I get, like the less I expect that.
Yeah.
I think I had all these like notions when I was young of what my life would be like, but I'm smart enough to know some of the things that I could do if I only wanted to pursue money with the skills that I have.
Yeah.
And you see, like let's say, for example, I could only do freelancing, and I could easily double what I make currently. Uh, but I choose to spread out my freelancing in between my own, you know, development of IP, my books, because in the end, I'm an artist, and in the end, what I want is a body of work, a library, and I want to leave something behind.
Yeah.
So whether it's going to make a dent or not, well, it's not really going to make a dent. I'm also smart enough to know that I'm just dust, and my It's a Living is not going to find its way on Mars when civilization moves there, if it does. You know what I mean? Like I'm too small. But the point is, I have to delude myself every day to give myself this false hope to create art, and
Yeah.
in turn, when I don't disclose that it's all like, an illusion,
Mm.
it inspires others. and
Yeah.
they go on living, and they go on creating, and they're motivated, and they learn techniques to better interpret what they see and experience. And in the end, like, just gotta milk everything, from this life,
Yeah. Diane Marie says, business must be taken serious. Your artistic talent must be protected. Artists need to understand and accept that they are as important and needed as many other professions. It's not just a fun thing to do. It's your life and your career, and really, folks love art. Just look around us, and couldn't have said it better.
Absolutely, Diane
Yeah.
Marie. Thanks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very serious, and and it's also fun. So it's everything. It's like joie de vivre. It's like the joy
Yeah.
of life. The joy of living. So yeah, there's a lot of passion in it, and there's humor, there's irony,
Oh.
there's all these things.
Your last chapter, Apollo's Prisoner, which I gotta say, this one isn't really business related, and it's just such a nice chapter. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, and I told you privately a section in there that I just really loved how you described it.
Thank you.
And it's just great. Why did you choose to end on a chapter like this?
That's a great question too, because for a moment it was almost going to be like the first chapter or the introduction.
Well, it sounds like it could be.
Yeah, it almost could be.
Yeah,
it's certainly a standalone almost, right?
Yeah,
it's like you could, it could be like a short story or something.
Yeah, totally.
I worked it around, and I just felt like, well, for one, I think it's the best written chapter, and it really showcases what I can do as a writer. There's a lot of poetry in it. It's got like good beats in terms of writing, I feel, and it's like deeper. And I don't know, it's just why I chose to finish on that. I felt like I was almost going to call the book like Apollo's Prisoner, right? Because it's such a good title. I actually had 2 pages of title options. That over the course of 2.5 years of writing it, I actually wrote like different titles and subtitles, and It's a Living came from somebody. I think I might have said it like casually, and then they said, like, it was at one of the Shut Up and Writes, and they said that's a good one. So then I jotted that down. I went with it. But Apollo's Prisoner is kind of it addresses. Well, it tells the story of my theory. One of my theories. It's an aspect of what I think the reason is for my being an artist, and the partial spoiler is that like is that it's not really a choice. Yeah. It's destiny, and I don't know if you noticed it, but the quote by Michelangelo at the beginning of the book is linked to this.
I have to go back and reread the quote. I don't remember the quote off the top of my head right now.
You have it?
I have the book. You just tell me where it is.
Okay. It's at the front. There's a quote by Michelangelo.
Oh, right there. Hold on. I just love dedicated to believing in yourself. I think that's a great dedication. But here's the quote. If such a gift I truly have been given, and yet divided, torn, still burdened stray, he is to blame who fashioned me for fire.
Yeah. So that's kind of it's a literary device, a connection, because it's actually linked to all the metaphors that I use in Apollo's Prisoner.
So
I don't know if people catch on that, but it's like, so it covers like why we're artists. That's what that chapter is about.
Yeah,
And so
and
in reading it, hopefully people can kind of like assess their own lives and their own passions for the art that they do.
Yeah, I think I thought about my path and things that made me go to art, but I agree. I don't think one really chooses to be an artist. Like you said, it's destiny. You kind of have no choice in the matter. It's who you are. It's built into us. I have theories on other things I'm not going to go into right now, but yeah, I reading that, and I will say it's not 100% a happy ending to the story. You were reading about. I'll tell a little bit. I don't want to give too much away, but you're reading about.
People will still read it,
yeah.
So.
Basically, your father and his father, and then, or his father first, then him, then you, kind of.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always a happy life for your father and your grandfather.
Right. My grandfather was abusive, physically, not sexually.
Yeah.
They were like farmers, and my dad every Saturday.
Yeah.
And so it tells the story of him growing up and wanting to be an artist, and having to give that up.
Yeah.
And running away from home just to escape the beatings, and going out to the big city and living on his own and living with his demons. So if you can imagine like somebody dropping out of school at 14 and then living on their own, like working in construction, wherever he could get work, but then you go back to this little apartment, and it's a very kind of like dim Dostoevskian sort of like setting, if you can imagine, and he's just like living with like fear and hatred, for the old man, and then all his dreams dashed, like he would, what child wouldn't give anything to just like be able to paint all day or draw all day and just daydream, but then to be yanked away from your childhood like that, and to have to prematurely be an adult, and to have to sacrifice that, there's a flame inside that could light a forest.
And it gets to one of my, and I know I said I wasn't going to tell a theory, but I always say art, and I think your father would have been an amazing artist because of what I've read about him, and I'll tell you why.
He is.
I think art.
I'm living proof.
Yes. I think art comes from some kind of internal pain. I don't think anyone who becomes an artist is a truly happy person inside. I think that's me personally. I don't know. I think we all, whether it comes from fear, whether it comes from a world needing escapism in our lives. You always read stories about these usually more fine artists being alcoholics or drug abusers or something. They need to escape. And you hear those type of stories.
But regular people are also alcoholics and drug abusers.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're not.
Humanity, it's a humanity problem.
Listen, I don't drink due to medical reasons, but I get nervous if I was allowed to. How would I be? Again, I know my art probably comes from growing up sick, and the fears that I had to deal with. And a lot of the people that I know who are successful, they're happy when they're doing art.
Yeah.
But when they're not doing art, they're not people you want to be around a lot of times.
Oh yeah, they could be very negative. I know that about myself. Because I when I was a teenager, I worked in fast food places, and I loved that. I did enjoy that, and actually I flirted with the idea of like maybe aspiring to own a franchise or something like that, because I love that. But then for me, it's like there's a caveat.
Mhm.
It's like I need to be able to assure that I can get enough time away for it that I could still do my art, because if I can't do my art, like I'm miserable.
I completely agree. Like I said, I grew up in working in high school and college in restaurants and such. I had the same thought about franchise. I even had a thought about opening up my own restaurant. At one point, there was a food truck in my way,
Yeah.
and I decided against it for the same reason. I need to do my. Also, I don't want to hate to cook. I actually love being in my kitchen. It's my second passion. If I didn't go into art and I loved cooking more, I would be a chef right now, and my show would be about cooking. It wouldn't. But that's the thing. I truly love. My wife doesn't cook. She loves that she doesn't have to cook. And I don't mind that she doesn't. I love going into the kitchen. I can spend hours in the kitchen cooking, inventing recipes, doing whatever.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun for me. But when I'm done, I want to be back in my art studio.
Yeah.
I want my drawing pad on my lap and watching TV. You know what I mean? Like I don't stop. Even when I spend that 10-hour day in the studio and I'm like, okay, I'm going to wind down and watch a little TV, my drawing pad's on my lap and I'm sketching.
Yeah.
It's something I can't leave. I have to have that time. I have to do it, And I think that's interesting. And like I said, I think you and I have a lot of common backgrounds and stuff with that. It's great. I think I'm going to wrap up because we've gone 2 hours and a little over 2 hours, 6 minutes.
There was one comment we missed, I think, Kerwin said something, no cocktails with the client.
Oh,
that's totally counter to, what is it? Counter to corporate sales. Yeah.
I entertain clients. It's funny. I'll bring up one thing. I did post that. I guess you didn't see it.
Okay.
I will say this, because clients can be very weird. And after seeing that, it made me remember one client. I ended up not working with them, but he gave me an address to meet him at. And I called him on the cell phone to make sure it was the right place. And it was a strip club.
Oh, yeah.
I had to go. I went in to meet the client because I'm like, I can't just say no. I mean, I don't know what the heck this was. But it was the weirdest meeting I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And he was sitting down, eating food.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, yeah, I didn't touch any food. I didn't even get a water to drink.
Yeah.
I was just like, let's talk business. And as soon as it was over, I'm like, yeah, we're not going to be working together. And I kind of walked out of that meeting.
Yeah. It's not the sort of client. Because it's like, I think the problem is the social setting. I mean, I guess in some corporate settings or sales especially, that's very common. And even women salesmen have to indulge these men that just want to have a beer and look at titties, and if you just play along and act like it's some boys club, they'll give you business. It's it's already I think even before you go, I think the premise is you got the business, just play along, let's have fun. That's kind of push each other.
Well, it's like I said, it was just a weird. It's hard when you're trying to talk art and graphic design when there's a woman coming up to the table asking if you want a lap dance. It's not a comfortable setting. So yeah, any client I try to now, before I meet clients in person, I ask, like I said, Starbucks, diner, a place like that. I'll make sure that I know the location. I try to pick it myself.
Yeah, and I also wrote about dress code. And actually, I even before the call, I had a T-shirt on, and I thought, you know what, I'll put on a dress shirt. So it's even in Zoom, if you have meetings with clients, for people that do, wear pants and put on a nice shirt. Just in case, because you never know. This is going to be on the internet, on the YouTube. So you never know who's going to see it, and you're representing yourself, so try a little.
Yeah. And before we go, I have to tell you, We talked for an hour and 45 minutes, and I only realized an hour and 45 minutes in that your lights blinked behind you. I was so into our conversation, I did not notice those lights blinking behind you until a good hour and 45 minutes into our conversation.
Oh, thanks for noticing. That is my artwork too. I've done some freestanding work.
Oh, really?
So it's like it's out of steel. I designed it, and I worked with a fabricator.
I'm gonna wrap up, but before I go, or before I let you go, and I'll drop you backstage, is there anything else you want to mention, promote?
Restless. It's my upcoming novel. It's gonna serialize, starting with the first 3 chapters this Friday. Add me to Facebook. Follow me on Instagram, and you'll start to get notices about it, where to read it. So, I'm excited. It's about the life of an artist struggling to find love and success, and it's written by me, and it's going to be awesome. And it's like just fun summer reading. And then I'm building up to relaunching. Well, I mean, my school's active now online, but I'm redesigning it and organizing the content later this summer.
That's great. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Michael. It was super, super fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. I also want to say it was very inspiring talking to you. It definitely, even though I've been doing this for a long time, it's making me rethink my work schedule and how I can get more work done. So it was very inspiring, and thank you for creating. You guys, go check out Big Boss Comic, read that comic, go buy this book. It's on Amazon. Look it up. It's a Living, Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century. It is a fantastic book. Great read. I want to say good night to Sebastian, who joined us. You guys,
Sebastian.
Love Sebastian.
Thank you, buddy.
Nerds of the Round. Nerds of the Round. Great show. Excellent interview, Jens from Kerwin. I'll check it out. You guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, especially for those who stayed the whole time. I really did have a blast. This was great. I'm just going to pull up the name of my guest for tomorrow so I can talk about that.
Thank you, Diane Marie.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the comment.
Yeah. Okay.
Restless. Looking forward to the new book.
It's going to be serialized. Just follow my Facebook. You'll see.
Thanks for the great interview. Get in tune. Thank you. You both are inspiring and do much fun too. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna drop you backstage.
Okay.
Thanks again for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I had so much fun talking, and we'll talk in a bit.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Do that. All right, guys. So, like I said, very fun interview. Joe Ryan, it was an awesome interview. Learned a lot. Thank you. Definitely pick up his book. I think you'll love it. Check him out at Big Boss Comic on Instagram and Twitter, and Masterpiece Art School on Instagram as well. Tomorrow, I'm having a special Get in Tune. This weekend, this Saturday and this Sunday, in Wayne, New Jersey, is PowCon, and the showrunner, his name is Salvatore Lomedico, is coming on, and he's going to talk about the show. I'm going to go on Saturday and walk it. I don't know if I'll be there the whole show, but I will definitely go. I know Annabelle said he was going. We're definitely going to meet up for lunch, buddy. I look forward to seeing everyone. Got a lot of friends doing the show. This is going to be the first show since shows came back that I'll actually be walking. I'm not doing any shows behind the table until 2022 myself, but I look forward to seeing everybody. I look forward to talking with Sal tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night. I'll have a guest for you next Tuesday for my regular time as well. And again, go pick this up. It's a Living, Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century. It's up on Amazon. I believe you can get softcover, hardcover, whichever you want. If you buy the hardcover, it might be a little more, but your book won't curl up like mine did here. So So check out the hardcover, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, guys.